around. Enter Bessanio and Shylock. And Shylock says 3,000 ducats. Well, now ducats is a form of currency. So to understand it, we might use the word pounds if you're in the UK, or dollars if you're in America. 3,000 ducats. He's sort of thinking about it. And Bessanio says, aye, sir, for 3 months. Yes, sir, for 3 months I need this money. Shylock replies with, for 3 months. Well, again, he's thinking, for 3 months. Let me think about it. And Bessanio says, for the which, as I told you, Antonio should be bound. In other words, if I borrow this money off you, Antonio will be the guarantor. Now, the idea of a guarantor is, let's say you want to borrow £1,000, okay? Let's say you're a 15-year-old watching this video. You want to borrow £1,000. Well, the person lending you that money has got no guarantee that you'll be able to repay that money. So they take on a guarantor, your mum and dad, which means if you cannot return the money, your mum and dad have to. And that's the case here, that Antonio will be the guarantor. And Shylock says, Antonio shall be bound. Well, so he's still thinking about it. He's saying, essentially, oh well, Antonio shall become the guarantor. Bessanio says, may you stead me, will you pleasure me, shall I know your answer? So 3 questions in a row. He's getting impatient here. And he's saying, are you going to lend me the money? Are you going to help me? Have you decided? Shylock says 3,000 ducats for 3 months and Antonio bound. So he's explaining really for the benefit of the audience here the terms of the agreement. Okay, so I'm going to lend you this 3,000 ducats and, you've got it for 3 months. If you don't return the money within 3 months, Antonio is in trouble. Bessanio says, you answer to that. In other words, well, your answer to that. What's the answer? And Shylock doesn't answer. He goes and digresses and says, Antonio is a good man. Bessanio says, have you heard any imputation to the contrary? In other words, has anybody said anything bad about Antonio? And Shylock says, oh, no, not my meaning is saying he is a good man, is to have you understand me that he is sufficient. Yet his means are in supposition. He hath an argosy bound to Tripolis, another to the Indies. I understand, moreover, upon the Rialto, he hath a third at Mexico, a fourth for England, and other ventures he hath, squandered abroad. But ships are but boards, sailors but men. There be land rats and water thieves and land thieves, I mean pirates. And then there is the peril of waters, winds, and rocks. The man is, notwithstanding, sufficient. 3,000 ducats, I think I may take his bond. Now what's Shylock saying here? He's saying, oh, not at all. What I mean when I say he's a good man is that you need to understand that although he is honourable, his finances are uncertain. He has a cargo ship sailing to Tripolis, another one going to the Indies. I've heard from the business world at the Rialto he's got a third at Mexico, a fourth heading for England, and other ventures in which he's risked his money abroad. But ships are only pieces of wood, sailors are just men. There are land rats and water rats, thieves and robbers, pirates, perils of the sea, storms of the rocks. In spite of all this, the man's honour is sufficient. 3,000 ducats, I think I can rely on him as guarantor. Now, I analysed this scene in the ebook, and it's very interesting what's happening here with Shylock. He's kind of foreshadowing the fate that awaits Antonio, and knowing that he might be able to get the better of him, he decides to take the deal. Bessanio doesn't understand that, though. He just says, be assured you may, rest assured you most certainly can rely on him. Shylock then says, I will be assured I may, and that I may be assured I will bethink me. May I speak with Antonio? So in other words, I will be assured, and to make sure of this, I will consider a careful plan. Can I talk to Antonio? Bessanio says, if it please you to dine with us, well, come and eat with us. And Shylock says, yes, to smell pork, to eat of the habitation which your prophet the Nazarite conjured the devil into. I will buy with you, sell with you, talk with you, walk with you, and so following, but I will not eat with you, drink with you, nor pray with you. What news on the Rialto? Who is he comes here? Now, what is he saying here? You need to understand the Bible to understand this. He's saying, yes, I would eat with you, and to smell pork, which is the animal that your prophet Jesus sent the devil into. No way am I going to eat with you. I will buy with you, sell with you, talk with you, walk with you, and so on, but I will not eat with you, or drink with you, or pray with you. Now, this is all to do with the difference between Jews and Christians. Jews believe in the beginning of the Bible, but they don't believe that Jesus is the Messiah. They're still waiting for the Messiah. Most Jews. There are some Jews who believe Jesus is the Messiah. Um, so he's kind of saying, as Jews, we don't eat pork, but as Christians, you do. So I don't want to have anything to do with you. As luck would have it, Antonio then arrives. And Bessanio says, well, this is Signor Antonio. You know, here's Antonio. And Shylock says as an aside, now an aside is something that we as the audience hear, but the characters on stage do not. And Shakespeare pretty much exclusively uses asides for villains in plays. So even the fact that Shylock has an aside here helps us to get to grips with the idea that he's the bad guy. How like a fawning publican he looks. I hate him, for he is a Christian, but more for that in low simplicity he lends out money gratis and brings down the rate of usurance here with us in Venice. If I can catch him once upon the hip, I will feed fat the ancient grudge I bear him. He hates our sacred nation, and he rails, even there where merchants most do congregate, on me, my bargains and my well-won thrift which equals interest. Cursed be my tribe if I forgive him. Now this is really interesting because Shylock is explaining why, or one of the reasons why he hates Antonio. And he's really saying, I hate him because he's a Christian, but even more because without thinking of the consequences for the rest of us, he lends money interest-free. And that's a biblical principle, a Christian principle, to not make a profit out of others. So as a Christian, Antonio will give money to people and say, look, I'll give you £100. All you have to repay me is 100. Now, as a Jew, Shylock makes money through lending money and charging interest. I'll lend you £100, but I want 150 back. So what he's saying is, you know, Antonio destroys my way of making money. The rate of interest we can charge in Venice is lowered because he lends money interest-free. So if I can get the better of him just once, I will pay back fully the ancient grudge I have against him. He hates Jews and constantly protests in front of all the other gathered merchants about me, my fair deals, and my hard-earned profits, which he calls interest. I'll be letting my fellow Jews down if I forgive him. Powerful words here from Shylock. Please do subscribe to the channel and we'll carry on with this series in the next video.